I remember staring at that 6-inch thick slab of reinforced concrete, my headlights cutting through the damp, post-rain darkness of my driveway, feeling that specific, cold sensation that you only get when you realize someone has just tried to completely erase you from their map. No note, no conversation, no warning, just a sprawling $1 million glass and steel monstrosity of a courtyard where my access lane used to be, sitting there like some silent, gray monument to pure, unadulterated arrogance. The guy who built it, this guy Brent, he was standing there in his pajamas, or something that looked like high-end loungewear, with this faint, almost pitying smirk on his face, like he genuinely expected me to just shrug, turn my truck around, and vanish into the night. It was the kind of moment that makes your blood run cold and then immediately start boiling, the exact moment you realize that the world isn't governed by fairness, but by whoever has the audacity to pour the concrete first. Before I tell you how I decided to turn his pristine, expensive nightmare into a pile of rubble, you have to understand why I was even driving up that lane. I live just outside a small, quiet town in western Pennsylvania. A place where the GPS eventually just gives up and the pavement turns into gravel and hope. My house is tucked away at the very end of a private lane, hidden by a thick curtain of trees that makes the whole property feel like a secret I've been keeping from the world for the last 15 years. When I bought the place back in 2009, the realtor made it crystal clear. There was a permanent recorded easement, a legally bulletproof strip of land cutting across the front property that was mine to use, no matter who ended up buying that front lot. It wasn't a handshake deal. It wasn't a favor from a neighbor. It was etched into the county records, signed, sealed, and delivered. It was the only way to get to my front door, unless I decided to take up heavy-duty land clearing and carve a new path through a literal mountain. For years, it was fine. Harold and June, the couple who lived there before, were the kind of people who'd stand at their mailbox with a coffee just to wave at you. It was peaceful, the kind of quiet that lets you actually hear yourself think. But then Harold passed, June headed down to Florida to be with family, and the property hit the market. And that's when Brent and his wife, Lydia, moved in. You could smell the entitlement the second they arrived. 3 luxury SUVs, a rotating cast of contractors who treated the place like a movie set, and a drone that spent more time in the air than half the birds in the county. Within weeks, the old house was gone, and this glass and steel spaceship took its place. It was the kind of architecture that looks incredible in a magazine, but feels like living in an operating room. I didn't really think much of it first. People are allowed to have bad taste, after all. But then I met Brent. He was standing by his construction fence one afternoon, holding a blueprint like a fashion accessory, looking like he was auditioning for a role in a Tecmobile biopic. When I rolled the window down, he gave me that practiced corporate nod. "You live back there?" he asked, pointing toward my trees. I told him, yeah, I'd been there a while. He didn't even blink. "Ever thought about moving this access road? We're looking for a cleaner visual line." I just stared at him for a second. "That's a recorded easement, man. It's permanent." He just laughed, that soft, condescending laugh people use when they think they're the smartest person in the room. Right. Things change. I didn't think he was serious. I thought he was just another guy who hadn't read the fine print in his own purchase agreement. But then I got deployed for a week of training, and when I came home, that's when the concrete was waiting for me. He hadn't just moved the driveway. He had built a fortress around himself, completely sealing off my only way home. When I confronted him that night, he was just as casual as he had been when he first brought it up. "Oh, that," he said, waving a hand at the courtyard. "We redesigned the approach. Looks good, right?" I just sat there, the engine idling, wondering if I was living in a simulation or just a really bad joke. He actually suggested I try to build a new road from the side street, which would require blasting through a steep, wooded hillside, a project that would have cost me a small fortune. He knew it. I knew it. And he clearly thought he had played the game perfectly. He turned his back on me and walked inside, leaving me to stare at his stupid, flat-roofed palace. I didn't yell. I didn't do anything dramatic. I just drove to the nearest motel, checked in, and spent the night staring at the ceiling, thinking about how some people really do believe that if they just act like they own the world, everyone else will eventually bow down. The next morning, I went to the county office. I pulled the original closing documents, the stuff most people just throw in a desk drawer and forget, and there it was, black and white, perpetual access, no ambiguity. I had the clerk stamp the copies, and I went to find a surveyor named Paul, a guy who had been marking landlines in this county since before the internet was a thing. When Paul and I showed up, I watched Brent's face shift from irritation to genuine confusion. He walked out, arms crossed, and watched as Paul started hammering bright orange survey stakes directly into the center of that brand new, perfectly poured concrete. Thunk, thunk. It was the most satisfying sound I'd ever heard. Brent scoffed. You really think a few sticks are going to stop this? I just looked at him, feeling that slow, icy calm creeping in. No, I said, but the judge might. My lawyer, Melissa, was a woman who didn't believe in wasting time or words. When I walked in her office, she didn't look shocked. She just looked at the easement, looked at the photos of the concrete, and said, that is a very, very expensive mistake. She filed for an injunction immediately. But here's where the twist came in, and honestly, this is where I knew I had him. We were looking over the utility maps, and Melissa tapped her pen on a line running right under the center of that courtyard. This, she said, is the main underground power feed for his house. My heart skipped a beat. Utility companies are a different breed of beast. They don't care about your design aesthetic, and they certainly don't care about your million-dollar view. They care about their access. If you block their line, you don't have power. And if you don't have power, you don't have an occupancy permit. Within a week, 2 utility trucks were parked on a lawn. I stood on the shoulder of the road and watched. I couldn't hear every word, but I saw the moment the reality hit Brent. He was gesturing wildly at the house, looking panicked, while the utility worker just held up a clipboard and shook his head. He wasn't just building a house. He was building a dark, empty monument. The silence that followed was golden. The crew stopped working, the construction equipment went quiet, and for weeks, the whole thing just sat there, a half-finished glass-walled ghost town with a row of orange stakes cutting through the middle like a wound. Watching them tear it up was better than any movie I've ever seen. The jackhammer started at 7 a.m. one morning, and for the next few days, it was just the beautiful rhythmic sound of a very expensive ego being dismantled. They hauled away the decorative stones, smashed the planters, and ground that concrete into dust. It cost him somewhere around $70,000 just to put things back to the way they were before he decided to play God with my property rights. 8 months later, the driveway was back to gravel. The power was connected, the house was occupied, and everything looked normal from the road. But every time I drive past, I can still see the ghost of that courtyard. It's a reminder that no matter how much money you throw at a problem, you can't build over the law. He actually tried to buy me out near the end, knocking on my door with a nervous, desperate energy, asking if we could find a solution. I just looked at him and gave him the same calm, empty smile he'd given me the night I found my driveway buried. No, I said. So, here I am, sitting in my house, looking out at a driveway that's exactly where it's supposed to be. Some people tell me I should have just taken the money, sold out, and moved on. Others tell me I'm a hero for standing my ground. Honestly, I think I just did what anyone who has been pushed far enough would do. But it makes me wonder about you. If you came home and found your life blocked by someone else's arrogance, would you have pushed back? Or is it better to just take the cash and walk away from the mess? I'm curious to know, how much is your peace of mind actually worth when someone tries to steal your access? Let me know in the comments. And if you like a story where the guy who thinks he's untouchable finally finds out he isn't, make sure to subscribe. Sometimes the quietest roads really do have the wildest stories.